Building a house requires materials: lumber, steel, concrete, drywall, roofing, windows, copper wiring, PVC pipe. Every single one of those categories saw serious price increases between 2020 and 2023, and none of them fully came back to where they started. Lumber is the clearest example. In early 2020, lumber was trading at around $350 per thousand board feet. By May 2021, it had hit over $1,700. That is nearly a five-fold increase in a little over a year. It corrected after that peak, but never returned to pre-pandemic levels. As of 2024, lumber was still running 30 to 40% above what it cost in 2019. And then the tariffs arrived and made it significantly worse. In 2025, the Trump administration imposed a 25% tariff on Canadian softwood lumber on top of existing duties that were already in place. Canada supplies between 25 and 30% of all lumber used in U.S. residential construction. A 25% tariff on a product that makes up a core input in every house built in America is not a political footnote. It is a line item on every builder's budget that did not exist before. The National Association of Home Builders calculated in early 2025 that the Canadian lumber tariff alone added approximately $9,200 to the average cost of building a new single-family home. That is not the full tariff picture either. A 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum flows into structural components, fasteners, and HVAC equipment. A 20% tariff on Chinese imports touches electrical components, tools, hardware, and finishing materials. Potential tariffs on Mexican goods threaten to hit concrete, appliances, and wiring. The NAHB's combined estimate for what tariffs across all categories are adding to the cost of a new home landed between $10,000 and $17,000 per unit, depending on the product mix. For a builder working on tight margins, which is most of them outside the very largest national companies, a cost increase of $10,000 to $17,000 per home is not something you absorb and move on from. It is the difference between a profitable project and a losing one, especially on homes priced below $400,000, where margins per unit are the thinnest and where the most buyers are actively looking. The interest rate environment on top of all of that is what turned a difficult situation into a crisis. When the Federal Reserve started raising rates aggressively in 2022, mortgage rates went from around 3% to over 7% in under 12 months. That was the fastest rate increase in modern history. For the new construction market specifically, it created a trap that is still catching builders today. Here is exactly how that trap works. A builder prices out a project when mortgage rates are at 5.5%, and the buyer math works. They pre-sell the home, take a deposit, and start building. The average construction timeline for a single-family home runs between 6 and 12 months. By the time the house is finished and ready for closing, rates have moved. If rates went up another point or more during those 6 months, the buyer who was approved at 5.5% can no longer qualify at 6.5% or 7%. The deal falls apart at closing. The builder is now sitting on a completed home with no buyer, carrying full land costs, construction costs, and financing costs in a market where fewer people can afford what they just built. This played out at massive scale across 2022 and 2023. New home cancellation rates, meaning buyers who had signed purchase contracts but backed out before closing, hit 26% in the fall of 2022. That is a number not seen since the 2008 financial crisis. More than 1 in 4 buyers who had signed a contract on a new home decided to walk away rather than close. Builders who were managing dozens of active projects simultaneously had a quarter of their pipeline collapse in a matter of months. For a smaller regional builder, that kind of cancellation wave is not just a bad quarter. It is a business-ending event with no warning and no safety net. The large publicly traded builders, D.R. Horton, Lenner, Polt Group, Toll Brothers, responded to the cancellation crisis by doing something only large companies with deep capital can do. They started buying down mortgage rates for buyers. Essentially, they were writing checks to mortgage lenders to subsidize a lower interest rate for the buyer, making the monthly payment affordable enough to prevent cancellations and attract new buyers. D.R., Horton, and Lenner were offering rate buy-downs that brought effective rates on their homes to 5% or below when the open market rate was sitting near 7%. That is a multi-thousand-dollar subsidy being offered on every sale just to move inventory. On top of the rate buy-downs, the large builders were also cutting prices. D.R. Horton was discounting completed inventory by $20,000 to $30,000 per home in certain markets. Lenner was doing the same. This is what large companies with access to capital markets and enormous revenue bases can do when the market turns. They can take short-term losses on individual homes to maintain market share and keep cash flowing. Small builders cannot do any of this. They do not have the financial cushion to subsidize a mortgage rate. They cannot absorb a $25,000 price cut on a $380,000 home when their margin was already $35,000. The large builders effectively use their financial scale to undercut the smaller competition during the worst market conditions in over a decade. The result is a construction industry that is rapidly bifurcating. The large national builders are stressed but surviving. The small and mid-size builders are bleeding out. Construction bankruptcy filings in the United States rose by approximately 41% in 2024 compared to the year before, according to data from bankruptcy court filings tracked by industry research firms. Construction represented a disproportionately large share of all business bankruptcy filings relative to how big the sector is in the economy. Most of these were not major companies making headlines. They were small home builders, companies doing 20 to 100 homes a year in markets across Florida, Texas, Arizona, Georgia, and the Carolinas. When these companies go under, the damage goes beyond the balance sheet. Buyers who put down deposits on homes under construction lose those deposits or spend months in legal proceedings trying to recover them. Subcontractors who completed work on the project go unpaid. Partially completed homes sit exposed to weather damage. Communities end up with abandoned construction sites that take years and legal battles to resolve. The downstream damage from one small builder going bankrupt can affect dozens of families, dozens of small subcontractors, and entire neighborhoods. And beyond the companies actually filing for bankruptcy, there's a larger group that is quietly exiting the market without any court filings. Builders who are finishing their existing projects but not starting new ones. Builders who are not buying new lots. Builders who are letting staff go and telling subcontractors there is no new work coming. These companies do not show up in the bankruptcy statistics, but they represent real lost capacity that the market is not going to easily replace. The labor problem underneath all of this deserves its own full discussion because it makes every other problem harder to solve and it is not going away quickly. The average age of a construction worker in the United States is now over 43 years old. The industry lost a significant portion of its experienced workforce during the 2008 housing crash and never fully replaced those workers. There are currently somewhere between 350,000 and 400,000 unfilled construction job openings at any given time, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data. These are not jobs that are hard to fill because the pay is bad. Experienced carpenters, electricians, and plumbers in high-demand markets are earning $30 to $50 an hour. The jobs exist and pay reasonably well. The workers do not exist in sufficient numbers to fill them. Trade school and apprenticeship enrollment has been increasing slowly, but slowly is not fast enough when the gap is this large and retirements are accelerating as the workforce ages. The result is that even in periods when demand picks up and builders want to build more, they simply cannot find enough qualified workers to staff the projects they want to run. Labor scarcity pushes wages up, which increases cost per unit built, which compresses margins further, And in 2025, the federal immigration enforcement crackdown made the labor shortage measurably worse. Construction labor in the United States has a meaningful, undocumented workforce, particularly in framing, roofing, concrete, and landscaping trades. Estimates from the Pew Research Center place undocumented workers at roughly 13 to 17% of the construction workforce in high-activity states like Texas, Florida, and California. When federal enforcement actions intensify without a corresponding legal labor pathway to replace those workers, projects slow down and sometimes stop entirely. Builders in Florida and Texas reported workforce disruptions in early 2025 that pushed project timelines out by weeks on active builds. Take all of these threads and pull them together. The builders were supposed to be the solution to the housing crisis. Instead, they are becoming the next casualty of a market broken at every level. If this video helped you understand what is actually happening, hit like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more content that tells the real story behind the numbers.